Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's just jump right in. We're looking at a totally fascinating blueprint today, and it comes from a really compelling story. We're going to completely unravel this core mystery of how to take just an ordinary, everyday paycheck and turn it into profound, life-changing financial security. Now, I know it sounds a bit like a late-night infomercial, right? But the absolute best part of this blueprint is that you don't need a massive salary, you don't need a lottery windfall, and you definitely don't need a degree in finance. It just takes a slight shift in how you look at the money you already have. So, let's get into it.
I want you to think about this specific number for a second. 40. Not 38, not 45, exactly $40. This is the exact dollar amount a warehouse worker quietly saves every single payday. Literally, no one at his work knows about it, his family doesn't bring it up at the dinner table, and his friends, they'd probably laugh if they actually found out what he was up to. But this one seemingly tiny number is the absolute foundation of a ridiculously powerful financial system. It's a system that quietly crushes those aggressive, stressful strategies most of us just end up abandoning after a month anyway.
Let me paint a picture for you here. It's 6:48 on a Thursday morning in Columbus, Ohio. Before the sun is even fully up and the daily chaos kicks in, this warehouse worker unlocks his phone and he sends exactly $40 into a totally separate, disconnected savings account. He has repeated this secret little habit flawlessly every single payday for nearly 16 months without missing a beat. And here's the kicker. Even though he earns just enough to cover rent, groceries, insurance, and gas, this routine built him something most Americans literally never manage to get, which is actual months of breathing room.
So why does this actually work when all those heavily promoted methods just flop? If I just handed you his rules right now, you'd probably nod, say, yeah, makes sense, promise yourself you'll start next payday, and then, well, do absolutely nothing. And why is that? It's because saving money has never actually been a math problem. It is fundamentally a behavior problem. It's a behavioral mismatch. You already know how to add and subtract, right? What we all really need is a system that actually works with human psychology instead of fighting against it.
Just think about the standard financial advice we hear constantly from every guru on the internet. Save 20%, invest the rest, pay yourself first. We've all heard it. And sure, it sounds fantastic in a textbook. But the glaring issue here is that this advice assumes you just have extra cash sitting around waiting to be perfectly optimized at the end of every month. It assumes there's some magical rest to actually invest. It's assuming a level of surplus that, let's be real, most working people simply do not have.
Which leads to a pretty obvious question. What if there is no rest? What happens when literally every single paycheck already has a job to do before it even hits your bank account? When you're dealing with rent, groceries, utility bills, and gas, those neat little guru percentages suddenly feel entirely useless. Actually, they're worse than unhelpful. They're demoralizing because they just shine a giant spotlight on the massive gap between what you're supposed to do and what you can literally afford to do just to survive the month.
And honestly, this brings us to a really validating truth. If you have ever tried a savings plan and given up, it is not because you lack discipline. People don't quit these plans because they're lazy or just can't commit. They quit because the advice they got was designed for somebody living a completely different financial life. It is incredibly frustrating and frankly exhausting to play a game where the rules weren't written for you to begin with. It's like trying to jam a square peg into a round hole and then beating yourself up when it doesn't work out. Well, our warehouse worker knew this frustrating reality firsthand. Before finding this quiet success, he actually failed 3 different savings plans. And on paper, every single one of those plans looked amazing. They had the detailed spreadsheets, the aggressive milestones, strict targets, the whole shebang. But every single one collapsed within a few short months. Why? Because they demanded this exhausting, constant level of motivation every single payday. You basically had to hype yourself up just to move the money. It was just way too much friction for a normal person dealing with a normal, stressful life. But then, everything shifted. One afternoon, his grandfather was out back repairing an old brick wall behind the house. He looked over at his grandson, smiled, and dropped this piece of profound wisdom. He said, "I've never built a wall. I've only ever laid the next brick. Just one brick, perfectly placed. Then another. Eventually, people walk by and admire this massive wall. But the mason, he never thinks about the wall. He only thinks about today's brick." And that one simple sentence completely flipped his entire perspective on saving money and building wealth. So how does a quote like that translate into a real-world strategy? Well, instead of chasing this giant, overwhelming savings goal, he created one tiny financial unit, one brick, exactly $40. Suddenly, his emergency fund wasn't this terrifying 5-figure number keeping him up at night feeling utterly impossible. It just became bricks. Every payday, one brick. He took a massive, intimidating goal and broke it down into a single, super manageable unit that required absolutely zero motivation to complete. Just one brick, placed quietly over and over again.
Now you might be wondering, what happens when extra cash actually does show up? The rule here is brilliantly simple, and the rhythm is fast. Unexpected money simply equals more bricks. Get a tax refund? Bricks. Get a bonus at work? Bricks. Cancel that streaming subscription you never use? Bricks. Sold some old stuff online? More bricks. Every single dollar that unexpectedly pops up has one immediate destination, and that's another brick for the wall. The rhythm is quick, it's automatic, and it's entirely ruthless. There's zero debate about what to do with the extra cash.
Which brings us to the final and maybe the most brilliant rule of this whole system. Never make a savings decision larger than a single brick. Look, here's the honest truth about saving. Huge deposits feel really exciting in the moment. You get this massive dopamine rush and feel like you're finally getting ahead. But that excitement inevitably fades. Motivation always drops off. But consistency? Consistency doesn't. Quiet, boring consistency is always going to outlast the fleeting thrill of some massive one-time deposit. It's really not about the size of the deposit. It is entirely about the unbreakable habit of making it.
And we all know life isn't perfect, right? Some months are smooth sailing, but other months, the car breaks down, a medical bill pops out of nowhere, or your hours get cut. Standard financial plans make you feel immense guilt when you miss a milestone. You feel like a total failure, so you just throw your hands up and quit the whole thing. But with this system, when life gets tough, you just pause. The wall waits. Nothing's ruined. There's absolutely no guilt, no feeling of, great, I have to restart from zero next month. The next brick is just sitting there waiting for you, exactly where it always has been. Small, simple, and entirely possible.
Now, people often hear this and their immediate reaction is, yeah, but $40 isn't enough to actually matter. And honestly, on its own, they're entirely right. $40 by itself changes absolutely nothing. But repeated hundreds of times, it changes everything. The emotional relief he experienced was profound. Sure, he wasn't instantly rich, but he finally stopped fearing every single unexpected expense. That constant, suffocating pressure, that feeling that just one flat tire could ruin his life, it started disappearing. Because you don't feel financial safety the day the wall is completely finished, you feel it every single time a brick is added to the pile. These days, he rarely even checks his total balance. He's not obsessing over spreadsheets. He just focuses on counting bricks while life keeps moving forward. There are no dramatic announcements to make here. There's no flashy, viral investment strategy to sell you on social media. No overnight success story making headlines. It is literally just one ordinary payday after another, quietly compounding in the background, totally transforming his financial reality while he just goes about his day-to-day life.
So how do we actually apply this to our own lives? Well, here is the exact, actionable blueprint you can use to start building your own wall tonight. First, totally forget the giant, scary savings number. Step 1 is just to find your real monthly survival cost. Step 2, choose one single brick. Just a manageable dollar amount that comfortably fits your current paycheck without stressing you out. Step 3, automate it. Make it so you don't even have to think about moving the money. And step 4, make a pledge that every unexpected dollar you get earns another brick before it earns anything else. That is exactly how ordinary incomes quietly turn into extraordinary stability.
You really don't build financial freedom all at once. You just can't. You build it one brick at a time. This system works precisely because it takes an impossible, terrifying